that back into the state of Texas. They will be arrested and brought to the Texas Capitol, and we will be conducting business.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that, Governor. Hey, thank you for being with us.
Y'all are all just pushing me out the door.
We're live.
Well, hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us on The Headline. I'm Brandon Waltons, Managing Editor of Texas Scorecard, and that was Governor Greg Abbott just a couple weeks ago after Texas House Democrats left the state, went to Washington, D.C. Governor Greg Abbott went on Fox News, went on a number of stations, and said if they step their foot back in Texas, they're going to be arrested, they're going to be brought back to the Capitol. Unfortunately, this week we found out that wasn't necessarily true. I'm going to talk about that and some other stories right now with Michael Sullivan. Michael, first of all, thank you for setting aside time, busy schedule to be able
I'm
to
like your
squeeze in.
ninth choice person to be here. You literally were asking people out on the street if they were available to come in this morning. They're like, hey, Michael, I literally can't find anyone else.
Not at all. It's always, it's always
that's okay. I'm okay with it, Brandon.
It's always a pleasure. But I talked about this. You have on one hand the governor and some other Republicans out there saying that while Democrats are gone and they've now been gone for more than 2 weeks, have left the state for Washington D.C. As long as they're gone, they're not in the House. We're gonna send people out. They're gonna be arrested, this and that. And yet you had one particular Democrat, State Representative Philip Cortez, who came back from Washington D.C. only to leave again.
Yeah, he literally got a permission slip to leave.
Yeah.
He was allowed to leave the building. They made the big show. Oh, well, once you're here, you've got to be on the floor, and we'll give permission to select members. Well, it turns out it wasn't select members. Everyone was allowed to leave. And so, and so it's interesting. So now you've got Phelan finally issued a single arrest warrant for Cortez, but this arrest warrant specifically he can only be arrested in Texas, according to the warrant that Phelan filled out, unlike every other arrest warrant that's ever issued. And it appears that Phelan wants him arrested not because he's participating in quorum busting, but because he took the caliche yellow permission slip or whatever of the day and didn't come back or whatever. It's just very it should demonstrate to all of us that none of this is about serving Texans. Not the Democrats, not the Republicans. It's all about them and their egos and serving each other, and it's not about policy outcomes for citizens.
To that point, I mean, once this started, just a few days into the call of the House is what they call it, when they're supposed to ostensibly kind of lock the doors and you can only leave with the written permission of the Speaker. But we're staying here and we're trying to arrest people, bring them back. You had State Representative Kyle Biederman say, whoa, I've talked to DPS, I've talked to the Sergeant's office. They're not doing anything right now. And that claim was kind of derided from some of his colleagues who said, essentially, no, that's not true. We're doing everything we can.
Yeah, and in fact, what you saw through that, again, the Philip Cortez thing kind of brought the lie out. But so many of these cats would so much rather not be troubled with doing their jobs. They want credit for work they're not doing. And I think it's on both sides of the aisle. Which again, not to sound like a broken record, but it should be a reminder to us that there are two parties, but it's not Republicans and Democrats. It's the ruling elite and everyone else. Those are the two parties. You're either in that elite party where you are controlling the mechanisms of government, or you're just one of the rabble, and that's really how they operate. And sometimes you get into it, and different factions, the Republicans, the Democrats, and the legislature will be fighting over which one of them should have more power over the rest of us. But that's really where the fights are, and that we all need to always take a step back and ask ourselves: are we serving the real fight, the fight for liberty, the fight for self-governance, or are we serving their fight, which is about which one of them are exercising more or different kinds of control over us?
And just to update people where we are right now, I mean, every day they are gaveling in very shortly. They're doing the prayer, they're doing the pledges. and then they're getting their permission to leave till the next day. That's been the pattern for about 2.5 weeks now. And we still have not seen Speaker Dade Phelan now is continuing to refuse to strip these Democrats of their committee chairmanship positions. We also haven't seen really any lawmakers fighting that on the floor either.
The Texas Constitution specifically allows the members who remain, when they're called into session, the members who remain are allowed to ascribe a punishment to those who are busting the quorum, and yet Speaker Phelan and the Republican majority are not doing that. And and to kind of pull back the curtain slightly on their process here, which is probably going to get some angry phone calls here in a couple of minutes. But look, Dade Phelan and Matt Krause hired as the parliamentarian a Democrat, a very liberal Democrat who worked in the Obama White House to serve as the parliamentarian. And so every decision they're making right now is made in deference to this very liberal Democrat Obama administration alumni who is advising the Republican majority on how to handle the Democrats, right? And so when you hear Dade Phelan, oh, well, we can't do this, according to the parliamentarian. Yeah, the parliamentarian who is literally on the other side.
Yeah, if he was a member
that guy would be doing a disservice if he was doing anything other than helping the Democrats.
If he was a member of the House, he'd be in D.C. too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think we, again, that whole stepping back thing, realizing this mess is a mess. We can blame the Democrats, and the Democrats have their share of blame in this. But the real blame goes to the failure of Republicans to actually govern the way they campaign.
Yes, and well, you're talking about big messes. You have the newest executive order from Governor Greg Abbott, altering some of his previous executive orders. They're really stacking up. I think this was the 37th that he's issued since he was governor. I think at least the 20th that's related to COVID. I mean, it's a very ever-shifting landscape.
Well, he has to do a new one every month, it seems like.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was a concern. Back in March, folks might remember that Governor Greg Abbott made a big deal, said Texas is 100% open. And since then, we've seen that businesses have been able to operate at 100% capacity, that municipalities haven't been able to put in mask mandates, and that there has been, I think, in the last few months, certainly feels a lot more open and normal than it did, say, fall of last year. Well, there was one stipulation that I think that some people forgot about at the time, which was everything's fine, everything's open, except if the hospitalization rate for COVID cases climbs to 15% in an area of the state. Well, then county judges are allowed to institute mitigation strategies, right? That's what they like to call them, including closing down businesses to as much as 50% capacity.
Right.
Well, some of the cases right now, some of the areas of the state are hovering across that number. And it looked like potentially you could be giving the keys to some of these county judges who have been shown to be very willing to put in place these restrictions. I know we covered it, a couple other sources covered it yesterday, and then yesterday evening,
3 hours after your article went live, Governor Abbott suddenly released a new executive order stripping away that provision. Which, hey, that's great. The problem, though, remains that this is just like the mask mandates. A couple of weeks ago, or last week, the governor comes out and says, "Oh, the time for government-mandated mask wearing is past." No. There was never a time in which the government should have been mandating people wear masks. There's this sense that Governor Abbott is really leaning into the criticism a lot of people made, which he's acting like a king. And you just saw this yet again, that the king has deigned to say we don't have to wear masks now. The king has deigned to say that his feudal lords can't, for now, shut down business, because he has not reputed his previous actions. He hasn't said, wait a second, that was wrong. I shouldn't have leaned into what the Democrats were doing. No, he hasn't repeated. He's just said, well, I'm now graciously not going to require this anymore, leaving open the possibility that he might change his mind in the future again.
And all of this takes place in the context that we have now been under a state of disaster for COVID-19, as he declared back in March of last year, over 16 months ago. And in that time, we've had even the legislature come, and they've held a full session. They're in a special session right now, and nothing has been done on any of this.
Right.
We still remain in this state of emergency, and it seems like the legislature has all but completely deferred their power making to him.
Well, you have to remember, every member of the Texas House and the Texas Senate wakes up in the morning, they look in the mirror and say, "Good morning, Mr. President." They are all convinced that they are deigned for a stop at the governor's mansion, maybe to the U.S. Senate, maybe they'll slum at the U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, and then they'll be the President of the United States, and then the entire world will recognize they should be emperor of the planet, right? I mean, every single 2-bit state representative starts off his day with those delusions, and usually ends the day with those delusions too. And so there is a sense to which most of them don't really want. They'll talk a good game at the Republican Women's Club, at the Tea Party group, at the Conservative Alliance, or wherever they're speaking about restricting executive authority. But at the end of the day, a whole lot of them really kind of see a situation where they're going to be that executive who will want to use that authority. So they don't really want to rein it in, which is why we as citizens have to yell a lot louder. We have to be a lot more in the face of those lawmakers to make them realize, that we expect them to do the right thing. Because they're not going to do it on their own.
In a not dissimilar situation to that, I mean, you had a couple weeks ago, Governor Greg Abbott pointing his finger at the legislature, the Texas House, saying that legislation to protect children from these gender mutilation surgeries, that the chances were nil of passing, and saying, well, then I'm gonna take an action here, should be in the next week or so. Well, we're now about 2 weeks since he's made that comment, and still we haven't seen exactly what that is yet.
Yeah. When you came into my office yesterday, Brandon, and said that, hey, the governor, did you see the governor's new executive order? My first thought was, oh, hey, the governor is filling the timeline. He's hitting in. He said a week and a half he'd had this order protecting kids. If folks don't know what Brandon's talking about, the whole gender mutilation, chemical castration, that kind of stuff, there's a great video that Jacob Asmussen and Drew Cook did called "Saving James" at TexasScorecard.com. Just click on the videos button there, and you can watch that. Really, I mean, it's a heart-wrenching, about 12 minutes video that kind of goes into this issue and what's happening there, focusing on one little boy who is, whose entire life now is one court order away from being chemically castrated and surgically made into the appearance of a female. I mean, it's just a horribly sad situation. Something that the governor has been aware of the situation, Brandon. He was briefed on it more than 4 years ago, has said nothing about it. Suddenly, 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, he pops out, says, oh, the House isn't going to do anything. Chances are nil in the House. I'm going to do something within a week and a half. Silence. The funny thing, of course, was you then had State Representative Matt Krause come out and say, no, some people say, Matt Krause refused to say that it was the governor who said it. Some people say there's no chance here. And look, I've got 60 of my colleagues who have signed on as co-authors and support. I've got more than 76 votes supporting it. That's what he claimed. And yet, if you go to the Texas legislature online today, look up House Bill 122, there's only one name on there, Matt Krause. Now, I understand that he's apparently waiting till he has more signatures on there before he turns it in. But you'd think that maybe with some of the eyes on this, maybe they would have gone ahead and wanted to sign up. What it tells me is no one's really serious about protecting these kids. They're not really serious about it. This is just political posturing from all of them, including the governor, including the members of the Texas House. They want the credit for saying something, but they don't want the work of doing something to protect children.
It's not unlike several years ago when you had the Women's Privacy Act moving through the legislature and getting halted and ultimately killed in the Texas House. Similar legislation, and after it was very clear that the bill was dead, well, then you got a bunch of co-authors signing on, right? Right now, this is not part of a special session. call, and if Governor Abbott's opinion that it has no chance of passing the House stays, then he's not going to put it on a call. So, now's a pretty safe time to co-author it, right?
Yeah.
If you don't think it's going to pass.
As it turns out, everything Governor Abbott put on the call this special session had a nil chance of passing in the Texas House. It's very funny. These guys, they pull out excuses the way most people pull out socks, which is to say with very little thought, they toss them out and hope no one pays attention to them while they're wearing them. Because sometimes I'm going to call a special session because the legislature isn't doing anything. I'm going to make them act. It's always a different rationale, and none of it seems centered around serving Texans, which should be the most frustrating thing to every citizen out there. And it's on us. We as citizens have to do a better job of making sure these lawmakers recognize that they exist to serve us and not the other way around.
Well, speaking of citizens getting involved and getting engaged, earlier this week we had reports Robert Montoya from some citizens that had gone down and seen this new border wall. If folks don't remember, Governor Abbott over the last few weeks has said Texas is building a wall. He's leading the effort. Unfortunately, as we found out, that doesn't apply to most of the border. And the border that is there, it's not exactly a wall. It's actually more of a fence. I spoke with Robert about that yesterday. Check this out.
In recent weeks, Governor Greg Abbott has touted new plans to build a wall along Texas's southern border. But as more details about what exactly that plan entails come out, some grassroots citizens are disappointed in the results. Robert Montoya, you wrote earlier this week about some observations some citizens, along the borders, people who are very familiar with border security in Texas have made about the wall that might actually turn out to be more of a fence.
That's right, Brandon. So, as we know, on June 16th, Governor Abbott announced that he was redirecting $250 million in state tax dollars for a down payment for a wall. Roughly about a month later, retired U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement agent Victor Avila and citizen Al Zito, who's from the North Texas region, they were in Valverde County, Del Rio County, and what they found was instead of a border wall, they found a chain link fence, rolls of it, ready to be prepared to roll out and put up instead of a strong barrier.
Not exactly the big wall that I think a lot of people probably pictured in their mind. The question is, though, was there any other material available to build other than, a something that could be cut with wire cutters?
Well, that's the interesting thing, Brandon, because Avila told us, he said that since the Biden administration decided not to continue with President Trump's wall, there are materials present that the feds have abandoned for Trump's wall that he says that he believes the state of Texas can just grab and start using to build their own barrier. It's just sitting there waiting to be used. It's just collecting dust at this point.
Amazing to see those pictures, and we'll put some of them on the screen here so folks can see this. This isn't the only action that Abbott has taken in recent days. Also earlier this week, in response to a lot of pressure from grassroots, as well as some of his opponents in the Republican primary, Abbott has directed the National Guard to help DPS with arrests along the southern border. Ultimately, though, I think there's a lot of unanswered questions with that as well.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. The order he gave, as I went through it, it says they're to assist the Texas National Guard. He didn't specify how many forces they're going to be deployed. The Texas National Guard he directed to assist Texas Department of Public Safety in arresting those who cross the border illegally. Not stop them from crossing, but once they cross, arrest them. Which that's something that Victor Avila, he talked with me about. He says if you really want to send a message about securing the border, you build barriers right at the border instead of doing it inland. And, one of the problems that has been discussed is that, there's a lot of people who own private property right at the border. But in Avila's experience, what he's found is that a lot of these private property owners are like, yes, please, go ahead, come in government, build a wall on my property right at the border. Avila said, if you did that, you'd be sending a message of saying, hey, you can't come here. Right now, he says, though, it's wide open.
This is going to be something that we're going to be, I think, hearing a lot more about over the coming months. Thank you, Robert.
My pleasure.
And indeed, we will be following that story closely. I mean, just amazing to see the talk and then actually to see, right?
Well,
it's a chain link fence.
Yeah, chain link fence. You merge that with what we've seen over some stuff's come out in the past couple of days of video of Border Patrol just kind of opening the fence, letting illegals in, not dissimilar to maybe the Capitol Police opening the doors, letting people in on January 6th, and just kind of standing by while things are happening. The story is that they've allowed COVID positive illegal immigrants in. You have to wear a mask alone in your home, but we'll just let illegal immigrants with COVID, come wandering through. And then even very recently, it's turning out that apparently some of the nonprofit groups who get money from the state are looking at filing a lawsuit against the state of Texas, saying that hey, this new order about transporting illegals means we could be arrested in Texas because apparently the federal government lets these charities just take illegal aliens from detention centers and just release them into the wild around the state. I mean, the more we learn, the more prominent this. So this chain link fence is just one more in this long litany of abuses from government about these guys just aren't really serious about protecting our border and protecting citizens. They're much more interested in sound bites and talking points.
Absolutely. I want to thank everybody watching right now. I see our own Tara Collin watching from the DFW Metroplex, Jana watching from Graham, Christine from Wilco, I think watching from the room next door, and Sharon tuning in from Fort Worth. Get out your calendars right now. If you haven't already marked off December 4th, that's going to be the Conservative Leader Awards held in Irving. And we've got early bird tickets on Texas Scorecard right now. You can get them. It's an event you're not going to want to miss it.
Yeah, it's a great event, always a fun event. Also, though, if you go to texasscorecard.com, you can find the nomination form. If there's someone in your neighborhood, someone in your community, someone you're familiar with around the state, a grassroots activist who deserves to be recognized, someone who's out there fighting the good fight every day, please go online and submit a nomination form for them. This is a great way not only to recognize their actions and activities, but honestly, more importantly, it's a great way to show other people how they can be involved. Use these great examples of folks around the state who are just stepping up and doing good things. Use them as examples to encourage others. So we'd love to have you both nominate someone and then attend the event on December 4th in Irving. Fantastic event for everyone.
Absolutely. And I want to remind folks, we've got the Texas Directory up at texasscorecard.com as well. If you're wanting to contact your lawmakers, and specifically if they're Republican lawmakers, I can tell you they're not, they've got a lot of time on their hands right now. So you can figure out how to get in touch with your locally elected officials there. And then also want to let folks know that this Monday I'll be filling in as Jeremy's gone for his This Week in Texas podcast, which should be fun as well. So be on the lookout for that. But again, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today.
Got to say a quick hello, though, to Ruth from Cisco, who's watching. Ruth, who is one of those folks who is one of the early recipients of the Conservative Leader Award. She is one of the most active, encouraging folks you'll ever meet. So if nothing else, come to the Conservative Leaders Awards on December 4th so you can meet Ruth from Cisco. Absolutely.
Well, y'all have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to The Headline. If you want to stay up to date with the news you need to be an informed citizen, be sure to check out texasscorecard.com and subscribe to our email list. You can also listen to this show and other shows on whatever podcast platform you use. Subscribe and review our show now to ensure other Texans can be informed.
Texas Scorecard has designed a Texas directory where you can access information about your state elected officials, including their contact information and lots more to help you learn about how you are being represented. So let's walk through it together. First, go to texasscorecard.com. Once you're there, click on the Texas Directory tab. On this page, you'll see a place to type in your address, or you can click the button to use your location. After doing this, you can scroll down to see a list of your state elected officials. From here, you can click on their profiles to learn more. In their profiles, you can see a list of committees, the map of their districts, district and capital office information, legislative ratings from conservative groups, articles about the officials, top contributions, as well as top expenditures. We hope that this Texas directory comes in handy during this legislative session. Remember, to access a directory and more, visit TexasScorecard.com.